and then how to have a relationship with God with their sexuality. Now note this. Too many of us, your relationship with God when it comes to sex is, God, please forgive me for that bad thought. God, please forgive me for this. Please forgive me for that. And what I want to challenge us is to be people who realize that, no, sometimes it's God. This is what's going on in my soul, and I long for you to sanctify it. Oh, God, and then to talk to him about how it's sanctified in a marriage, praying for our spouses, praying for other people, praying for the potential in marriage, all these things. And so, yes, we can learn self-control, and then we learn how to have it with other people. We want to walk our children through this, and we want to help them by reminding them there are things that sexuality can't do. It doesn't cure loneliness, right? I say this a lot, and I say it on purpose because our culture thinks somehow I'm lonely. It's because I'm not having enough sex. That is actually what's causing people to be lonely, is to think sexually about people. And so you can't engage in a relationship with a friend, in platonic, male, female. You can't get to know a guy who's just your friend. It has to be sexual. Now, and as the increase, the LGBT stuff comes, you can't really do that with a female without being accused. And so we resort to having relationships with text messages and cultivated human beings on a screen because there's no real danger there, quote unquote. And we don't know how to build friendships. We don't know how to build relationships. So we want to help our children gather around real people, have real conversations, be able to engage and see them not as objects, but as people to value with stories and interests, with direction in their life. We want to be praying for them, caring for them, and we want to engage that. It can't cure loneliness, but friendship can. It can't give you your definition of who you are. As much as the world wants to tell you that, sexuality is too plastic. It changes way too much. And it's motivated by culture and society. And so, look, you want to ground yourself in the identity frame that we gave you last week. Who God's made you in creation, how you are in the mess of the fall, what he's doing to redeem you, and ultimately in that consummation. But all these pieces are there to help us begin to engage. And you're going to do that through every single phase. Some of you got older kids, some of you got younger kids, some of you got older grandkids, younger grandkids, all these kinds of pieces. And so I want to walk you quickly through the phases again, and then we're going to kind of close it up here. And so the first one is the phase of birth to preschool. And by the way, if you're a single parent and you're a single father with a daughter, you need a female in your life to help out because there are just things that women get that men don't get. And the vice versa. If you're a single mom and you got a son, you need a dad or a good uncle, somebody who you trust and is a strong Christian man to step in and help your son through this process of development. And so when it starts with birth to preschool, yeah, you're going to have conversations about sex. Not in the way you think. You're just basically going to let them know, yeah, God made boys and girls. It's as simple as that. When they're little, hey, God made boys and God made girls. They're different. And maybe you want to help them understand how they're different, but you really aim at helping them understand their own anatomy. It's so critical that they name their anatomy correctly. And that's because when you have little catchy phrases, little like, oh, you're little, whatever you want to call it, if they ever wind up in a situation where they need to tell an authority what happened, they need to be able to speak very specifically. And many men and women who have been molested oftentimes were caught into a situation where they just didn't know what had been done to them because they didn't know what these things were. And many counselors and people out there are like, hey, basic thing is you can have those fun names or whatever to help you out, but they need to know exactly what they really are. That way, in cases where they need to hear, they need to speak about it, even in pain. Children can have pain. Trust me, we've had a situation like that in our family where a strange pain showed up. And thankfully, our kid could tell us exactly where that pain was. And so we could get them to the doctor. Now, they're going to ask you weird questions. Where'd my belly button come from? What's the belly button? And you can answer appropriately. Oh, it's where, when you were in your mommy, that's where you got fed. You didn't get fed through the mouth. You got fed through a tube that was attached to your belly button. And that's fine. Now you're beginning to introduce concepts to them. They're going to go like, how did I get in the belly? So, well, that's where God starts you and you begin. You don't even have to go into all the details. And so you can go there at a young age and still make it general enough. And then you're going to hit the second phase, which is elementary. And this is going to grow as they grow. You're going to get a little bit more specific. You're going to introduce some basic sexuality to them, that it's a husband and a wife. They get together, and you're going to talk about that. And that's where child comes from. Again, you're not going to get into details, because guess what? They're going to go, yeah, that's gross. Perfect. You should probably be talking when it's gross. Because then at least they know it exists, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, whoa, gross. But now they're associating it as not gross for mom and dad, but it's gross for them. Eventually, being not gross for mom and dad, then it's not really that gross for me either, but oh, okay. So you're helping them process through this journey, because they're going to hear about these basic things, and you're going to rightly explain some of the dangers. You're going to talk about bad pictures that are out there and why we keep you safe in the internet. You're going to talk about what if somebody approaches you at school and says, hey, check out what I found on my phone. This is a conversation we have constantly with my kids. What do you say when they say, check this out? No, thanks. I'm good. Or what is it? Like, we don't talk to anybody online that you don't know that's not your friend. In fact, we just don't allow that until they're in their high school years. And so it's our job to build appropriate boundaries, help them out, to have conversations about the potential dangers, but then also to talk positively about how God made it for marriage. And this is hard. If your marriage struggles, you still want to talk positively to your children about marriage, especially when it comes to sexuality. You want to paint the beautiful picture of it and the biblical picture of it. And yes, warn that it's not always that way, but it is a good thing, and this is what you should strive for. Paint the finish line. Tell them where they're headed. And then by the time they hit middle school and they're starting to go, oh, I think she's cute. He's so handsome, whatever it is for everybody. You really want to seriously begin that you should be talking about sex. Probably roughly about 6th grade now, because of the advent of pornography, how quickly it captures kids. You want to be talking about sex and the reality of sex and what it means. And in fact, this comes down to everything from considering how they're treating other boys or girls, to sexting, to things like this. These are dangers kids are getting into. And you want to be like, look, your body is for that person who gives their whole life to you. It is not something that you give away freely. It's not something that you do these things online for. No, we want to help you. And then you seriously talk about sex because those things are changing. You talk about the hormone changes. You talk about their period. You talk about what's going on with all the hair and the sudden drive in the boys and suddenly the attraction. What do I do in my head? No, because you want to engage them in the wholeness of who they are. Like, well, how is that making you feel? Why are you feeling this way? What's going on? Because again, we want to help them away from the dangers of STDs and pregnancy and the difficulties that it can create throughout life, because guess what? You remind them the choice you make now is the choice you live with when you're 60. The choice you make now is what's going to affect college. The choice you make now is what's going to affect the rest of high school. The choice you make, and I know a lot of people who wish they had made different choices when they were in high school. It has affected their life since. And introduce them to them. Bring them to the youth group. Let them talk. Listen to testimonies. But then allow them to hear the truths about what we're talking about and to rejoice in it. Now, make sure it's a safe place for your kids to confess. They're not going to be perfect. They're going to tell you stuff, and you got to be ready for it. And that's okay, because you got to remember, you probably didn't do it right either, right? Nobody was perfect. And so you need to be ready, and you're not going to show them you're a hypocrite by admitting, hey, I've struggled in these things. What you're doing is it's how you end the conversation. This is why I don't want you to go in this direction. It doesn't give them permission. It gives them an object illustration of why it's been difficult. Don't paint it all good and perfect. No, it's hard. And if you can't handle it, find somebody who can. If you're the wife, you can't handle your son, your husband should be the one bringing it up to your boys. I really do think that it needs to be the dad to the sons and the mom to the daughters, if that's potential, especially in middle school, because it just gets weird. Don't do that. When it's mom talking to son, that just does weird stuff. Don't do that. And so I want to encourage you. Now, you might have to if you're single mom, you might have to if you're single dad, I get that. But I want to encourage you guys, if possible, to have somebody be there and help you out. Now, last is high school. The bottom line is you are in spot-on training. You are right there training at every moment. They are already understanding what's going on. The basic framework should be there. And now it's, how are you doing on the web? Hey, can I check your cell phone? And by the way, it's your cell phone. Do not give up the rights to your child's cell phone, because it's you paying the bill and it's you going to jail if there's child pornography on that cell phone. Did you hear me? It is not theirs. You have every right to unlock the darn thing and check everything on it. I would advise that you even set the limits and the pieces until roughly that they're juniors and seniors in high school. When I say that by that point, you should let them have full freedom. They need to make the messes in your own house, not wait till college. And so allow that freedom to release in high school, but now they've known you've protected them, you've had conversations about it, you're talking about self-control, you're dealing spot on with self-control. How are you doing with this? How are you doing with that? Where is that? And hopefully you've opened this conversation up because you've had talks, and it's common that your kids are coming to you and they mess up. And I'm not talking about mess up like, wait, hey, we just had sex. I'm talking about mess up like, I saw something and I feel really bad about it. Like, sometimes that's as bad as it's going to get for some of you, and praise God. But hopefully they feel open enough to address, hey, I've got this guy, he's talking to me, and I feel really confused on what to do. He's asking me to do things that I'm not comfortable with. Hey, thanks for watching, and if you enjoy the content that you're seeing, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that church bell there at the bottom so that you can get notified when new content appears, when we have a live service that's going on. And if you like the messages and you want to go further, we have a podcast called The Rabbit Trail, in which we pick up things we didn't discuss in the sermon, or we follow the questions of people wherever those rabbits lead us. And so if you're interested in that, down in the description is a link, and you can join us right there.